Hello guys, so today is the first episode of Frankly with Fazal, and our first topic of the podcast is law as a profession for youth. So here we have our first guest who has a diverse education, who has done education across the world. He has done his initial days of schooling in a Hindi medium school, then went to Egypt, then did high schooling in France, then for undergrad went to America, and finally a law degree at Cambridge. So I hereby welcome our guest for today, Mr. Akhil Sibal. Hi sir, how are you?
Hi Fazal, how are you?
I'm great sir. So I wanted to ask you, give very few interviews, and last interview I saw of yours was with Mr. Karan Thapar. Now you're giving interview to me. How is life going?
Well, it's been quite a journey since then. That was many years ago. I forget how long ago, but quite a while back. And it's been a good journey in the profession and life. I have two daughters now, 13 and 6. So life has moved forward, and a lot has been happening.
Yes, sir. And since then, you have become a senior advocate also. So you come from one of the most renowned legal families across, who's well known across India. Your grandfather, Mr. Hiralal Sibal, he was an advocate general. He was awarded the Padma Shri award. Now, Mr. Sibal, we all know, who is president of the SCBA currently, and my mentor also. So do you, when you entered the profession, coming from such a big legal background, did you face any difficulties as such?
So look, it's both a boon and a burden. The positive side to it is that there's already a goodwill in the legal market. There are clients who are familiar with the family. There are other lawyers who are familiar with the family, and so you're a beneficiary of that goodwill. And that also means that often clients are willing to take a chance on you. That initial opportunity that you get to prove yourself, that comes far more easily with a legal lineage. But the flip side and the burden you carry is that there's a wealth of expectation. Yes. You feel the weight of that expectation. Especially in the initial days when you are finding your feet and figuring things out. Yes. People tend to assume that somehow you were born with a legal genetic drip and that you must have imbibed everything there is to know and somehow have a head start in terms of knowledge and so on. But the truth of the matter is that you are ultimately as inexperienced as any other person starting out in the profession, and you are facing your fears just like others are, and you are out of your depth in many ways. Yes. And of course the study of law and the practice of it are in many ways divergent, and a lot of the procedural part of it and the practices of the court are things that you aren't taught. Yes. So you face the same sort of hesitation as others, but people somehow expect that you should automatically be better at it. People also have a misconception that that goodwill means that judges will give you greater latitude. But the truth is that it's often the opposite, because judges are also conscious, of the fact that you are, that you come from a certain family and have a certain pedigree, and so at times their expectation of you is greater, and they test you a little more. Yes. They don't want anybody sitting there to believe that they're going easier on you, so they're also conscious of that. Yes. So sometimes you at times have a tougher time. You also have to somewhere learn to manage your own expectation, because you, apart from others constantly measuring you against, your father, or your brother, or your grandfather, or others in the profession who have come before you in your family. You have to learn to, in a sense, run your own individual race. And that's not easy at times. And if you do well, if you perform, then people say, well, obviously. He had all the opportunity. And if you don't perform, then they say, Arey, nalayak hai." What happened?
Yes, sir.
So that you're carrying that with you, that baggage and that thought, and you have to learn to drown it out and just focus on what you're doing and forget about all this, which is not easy.
Yeah. So I remember I once met Mr. Akhil Sibal, sir, elder brother.
Yes.
So once I met him, he told me this one very interesting thing. He told me, like, law is, being a lawyer and being in litigation is not like running a factory. Like, you can leave it on auto mode and it will go on. You have to prove yourself every other day.
Yes.
Because in the courts, when you go, you're deciding someone's life, you're deciding the future of the other person, your client. So you have to perform. If you don't perform, they won't come to you with more cases and approach you for because lawyers change, people change lawyers. So if you don't perform, they will not take you as lawyers to represent them in court.
Yeah.
So I feel that you have to be on your toes and perform every single day.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you can't, if your track is of an arguing counsel, you can't delegate.
Yes.
Because you can't delegate that job of arguing to anyone else. The client has come to you for you to argue.
Yes, sir.
And it's like, an actor cannot say, well, somebody will fill in for me.
Yeah.
Then they'll be cut from the part.
Yes, sir.
Which is the lament of litigants that, we engaged so and so and they never showed up.
Yeah, this happens, sir. Because now, sir, I'm a first generation lawyer but from a well-to-do family. I admit that, there's no hesitation. But sir, we face as first generation lawyers problems in day-to-day life. So sir, do you have any clue? Because when I was coming, so I was telling my friends that I'm going to interview you for law as a profession for youth and youngsters. So they're like, you come from a legal background, as I said before in the introduction. So do you have any idea what are the problems of the first generation lawyers or lawyers just entering from college to the profession they're coming into? So do you have any idea?
Obviously, over the years, there are so many young lawyers that I've had a chance to interact with closely, with those who work with me and have worked over the years, and others in the profession who come to brief you.
Yes, sir.
You interact with them, you learn part of their stories, and of course you realize that people are coming from all kinds of economic strata. They're coming often from out of town. They have varied educational backgrounds.
Yes.
And of course, if a person like me felt out of place, out of my depth, intimidated by the environment, one can only imagine what others are facing and experiencing. So number one, there is always commonality in the sense that no matter what your pathway has been to get you to that point, as a young lawyer starting out, usually the kinds of questions you have about the way things work, the processes of the court, how to argue, how to conduct yourself in an appearance, how to brief a senior advocate or any arguing counsel. Those are all things that occupy the attention of all those who are starting out, right? So number one, no matter where you're from and whatever your background, many of the fears and trepidations are similar. I can relate to that because somehow, even though now I'm almost 23 years in the profession, I can still recall vividly how I felt in those initial days and over the years, and how over time I gained more confidence, and what was the method that I employed to improve myself. So, I haven't forgotten. So it's not difficult for me to therefore relate to somebody who's just starting out in terms of what questions they have in their mind. And as you work with your juniors, you identify what are those typical patterns of confusion and problems. So therefore I will say that I do understand to some extent. In a general sense, of course, you are also aware that people are dealing with distance. They are dealing with responsibilities. They may be married, they may be unmarried, they may or may not have children, family obligations. So those are things that, yes, one is aware of, but at the same time, we have to get the job done. There's a task at hand, and you have to rise to the occasion. And so there is a certain latitude for those individual difficulties, and you must be humane about things, and people are not slaves, and you have to be kind to those around you, and so you make accommodations for people when they suffer those difficulties. You figure out a way to support them, but point is, at the end of the day, you're all working together with a task at hand. So to some extent, you have to leave that behind and rise to the occasion.
Yes, sir, but how do
Not
you...
easy.
Not easy, but how do you leave that behind? Like in certain circumstances, like I can't forget, so I'm 1 year into the profession, 22 years behind you. So last year, I realized one thing while I was looking for the job. You helped me, thank you, sir. You were my reference. Thank you to Adit, sir, who kept me. But sir, I realized that over a period of time, I saw my friends. Without a reference, you can't get a job in the legal profession. Be it the firms or be it any good chamber, you can't get a job without a reference. So why is it so? Even if you're fit, you're rejected because you don't have any reference there. So what do you think about that mentality of chambers and firms, that you need to have a reference irrespective of you being talented or fit for that job?
So two things, just one further point, the last question, and then feeding into this next question. Remember, it's also, it's like there's a lot of social media, Instagram, and everybody by and large, in the pictures that they post, the image that they portray, life is great, life is wonderful, everything is fine, right? And you see that side of people that they project, which is a positive side. But obviously reality is usually very different than the image we portray. And similarly, no matter why I said to some extent you have to leave it behind, to some extent, is that ultimately everybody comes with some baggage, some difficulty, some challenge. Right? Now, you asked, your first question was that, look, does the legal lineage come with a burden or a challenge? Now, most people don't think about that.
That's true.
It's human nature to look at somebody and imagine somebody who is coming from a place of privilege, and imagine that they face no difficulty. And to then look at the challenges you're facing, and not unjustifiably. It's often, you can fall into a spiral of negativity.
That's true.
That, look, why me?
Why me?
Why me? How, and of envy. If only I'd had that opportunity, things would be different. But life is not like that. You have to make it, right? Those who may have had a difficult starting point, there are many who overcome challenges. Their journey is that much more extraordinary, right? But people do it, right? They may look at the judges.
Yes, sir.
Judges who reach the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Look at the background of so many of them.
Yes, sir.
Humble backgrounds, often no legal lineage.
Yes.
But they've made it up the ranks, up the ladder, been noticed, been identified, performed. Right? It is that true with lawyers as well. So I think you have to look at those stories as stories of inspiration and pull yourself up. Not focus on what you don't have and the opportunities that weren't handed to you, and focus on what you can make of with the hand that is dealt to you. Right? There's no point.
Yes.
It is what it is. You can't change it.
Yes, sir.
You can wallow in it.
Yes, sir.
You can, look at it and say life is so unfair, which it probably is.
Life is unfair.
Yes, it is. Of course, it's unequal.
Yes, sir.
But then make the best of it. Move forward. And once you look at things with that perspective and that positivity, there is a pathway ahead. Look, we live in a country where there is a lot to be grateful for. And there is a lot that you can easily point to and criticize.
That's true.
Systems don't work the way they should. Opportunities aren't distributed the way they should be. And it's not that it's only in this country that happens.
Everywhere.
All over the world. But you may look at some other first world countries and say, oh well, their systems are better.
Yes.
And if only I were a citizen of another country, things would be better. That is also not true. That's also a misconception. But my point is, yes, you can look at the system and say, look, it beats you down. There's no place for an honest day's work. Corruption is rewarded, and nepotism is rewarded, and the system is fixed.
Yes.
You can say all of that. It is not entirely untrue.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? There is a lot of truth to it. But I assure you that there are pathways which are straight and narrow, and they are pathways to success, to achievement. And it doesn't matter where you come from, that opportunity will present itself. You have to make the most of it. You can get ahead. I disagree with you that you can only get to offices through a reference. There are people who have just applied to me to join my office. I have met them, or I may have noticed them in court and said, look, asked one of their colleagues, check if that person is willing to join. So there are such people, and very frankly, I'll be honest with you, most of my juniors that I have had over the years have not been on a reference.
Really?
Most of them have not. 90+% have not. Most of them have just been people who apply. I interact with them. If I, over time I've become better and better at assessing in a short time. And if I see a spark, if I see, a level of experience that I am looking for, I give them a chance.
Okay.
Right? So that is true of what's been my own experience.
Yes.
And many of them have turned out to be excellent.
Yes.
And they've gone on and left the chamber and, done well for themselves. So my own experience has been that it is not on a reference. I do agree that is so, that happens, and sometimes that can give you a leg up. But at the end of the day, if you are, have a little bit of faith in yourself, you are good, right? You have a passion, and you work hard, you will get noticed.
Okay, sir.
Right? You may have to struggle a little more, right?
Yes.
But you'll get there.
So it means I have also come to the civil side now. So are you noticing me also?
I see you much more often on this side.
Yes, sir, that's
than
right.
I used to. That's right. That's right. No, but I do, in the sense that, look, I notice when I notice a young person maybe arguing,
Yes.
maybe sometimes seeking a passover and is forced to argue. I immediately notice and I kind of make a mental note. I will say very honestly, if I notice a female lawyer arguing in particular and holding her own, I notice that more, only because there are fewer who are, arguing.
That's true.
Right? So when I see somebody arguing well,
Yes, sir.
I do notice. I do notice.
But like in courts, you may see, like as you say, that juniors are asked to ask the judge for a passover when the senior is not there. So, sir, there's this situation that we all face, like our young lawyers, like a senior is on legs in some other court, like we're in High Court, the senior is in Supreme Court, or somewhere else, some other court. So, we sometimes we seek a passover and the judge says, you argue, but we don't have the instructions to do so. We can't do this because if something goes south, then I think we are fired, we are done, dusted, legal career over.
So two things. You're right. It is unenviable to be in that position. Firstly, be ready with the brief. Always. Even if you don't have instructions, it's a great opportunity, number one, to prepare yourself. Even if you aren't able to actualize that preparation into an argument before the court.
Yes.
But number one, be ready, because you never know when that opportunity will get converted. Now, if you don't have instructions, as you say, then my suggestion is you should say to the court, I am fully ready with the matter, but I don't have instructions to argue.
Okay.
When you say that, most judges will say, don't worry, argue. And they will not pass an adverse order.
Okay.
They may pass, if you convince them, a positive order. But if they are not convinced, they will defer it. Say that. Try it next time.
I will.
Or
surely.
if any of your colleagues want to know how to deal with the situation, suggest that to them. If they watch this, maybe I'd ask your viewers to try this. Just try it.
Yes, sir.
Be candid with the judge, but say, I am fully prepared. And be fully prepared. And say, I don't have instructions. The judge will give you a chance, and nothing bad will happen, I assure you.
I have heard everyone saying, so there's some, but everybody says be ready with the brief. But sometimes there are matters that the junior is not upon that matter, some other junior is there. But he is also not there, and he is also with the senior in that court. So what does the person do when he's not prepared?
Look, if you're not prepared,
then say this thing.
Obviously, don't say I'm fully ready.
Yes, sir.
If you're not ready, you lose the opportunity. The idea is be ready to the extent you can be. Right? And when you're ready, seize the opportunity. Seize it not by arguing without instructions, but seize it in the sense that you've done justice to your client by informing the court that I don't have instruction. If still the court forces you, the court forces you. So be it. So be it.
Okay, so I'll keep that in mind. So the next question we come to. The next question is so in this profession, I'm gathering through this conversation, it all depends on the mindset. You have to you need to have a mindset that irrespective of what is happening in your life or you just have to be focused. Don't focus on the negatives, focus on the positive, and always be prepared and be confident. This is what I've gathered through the conversation we have till now. But sir, what about how do we gather the confidence? There are some persons who are shy, people who are shy, they can't argue, but they want to be arguing counsels. So do you have any tips or any advice for those people who want to argue but are shy and want to enter the world of litigation? So how do they increase their confidence?
So if you have, number one, within the litigation world, there's many places that, a lot of people coming into litigation and consciously choosing not to do corporate law.
Yes.
They come in and as they should with the aspiration to be an arguing counsel. Because that you feel you're more in the limelight. You're on the front line.
Yes, sir.
Right, and that's where the glory is as well.
Yes.
And so people, almost everyone aspires to be that.
Yes, sir.
Now I don't want to say that not everyone is capable of that, but I think you have to in the course of time ask yourselves, what is the best fit for me within the profession? It may not necessarily be as an arguing counsel. It may not be. Maybe you're not suited to it. It's possible. So I think that you have to learn to, over time, be honest with yourself, identify your strengths, identify your weaknesses, figure out who you are in the profession and as a person, of course, right? And if that's not a good fit for you for whatever reason, then doesn't mean that you need to lose heart. So that's number one. Number two, having had that conversation, if you still say, this is not to say that, look, there may be those who starting out just have are better suited in the sense that they exude a certain confidence. They are more comfortable with public speaking, right? And so this is not to say that if you have some drawback that you feel you have, or you're shy, as you said, or you may not be so comfortable articulating, and so on, that doesn't mean that you can't have that aspiration. I'm not saying that. These are all things you can work on. And as far as your question of how do you work on them, right now, I'll tell you some of the things that I did.
Yes, sir.
When I started out on my own. I didn't join anybody's chamber. Initial days, I was briefing some seniors, and as a junior counsel.
Yes.
And I, some of the cases had. There were high-profile cases, or there were big stakes, and so on. So I knew I'm not going to get an opportunity to argue.
Yes.
But I didn't let that deter me from almost pretending that, the next day it was me who had to argue. Now, what I would do the evening before is prepare to argue. I'd even, voice my arguments in a room. I'd actually speak out my arguments. I'd plan them in my head as if I were the one who was going to argue the next day. Now, the great learning from that was that when I went the next day, and of course, I didn't get a chance to argue, but I was able to compare what I had planned, how I had planned to argue, with the way that the senior actually argued. And so I had an immediate point of comparison, and therefore I was able to think about what maybe was wrong with my approach, right? Ultimately, you will only face your fears in terms of arguing when you stand up and argue.
Okay, sir.
Right? There is no substitute for that.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you can generally, for example, in conferences, I used to try to overcome my shyness or my fear, even though there was a super senior in front of me, and engage with the senior. Make a point, right? Try to speak up. So I think you have to take that initiative to the extent you can around you, to do that. Do it at home, do it with friends, learn to be analytical, learn to voice that analysis, think of propositions, articulate them. And as I said, I used to alone in a room actually speak out, sound out the argument. You can do that.
So coming to just on a lighter note, I was working with, I'll tell you, please children, don't get inspired by this thing that what I did. So I saw your interview, you said that you started by yourself.
Yes.
So I was like, if you can do it, I can also do it. So it's like, I got 2-3 cases of my own, as you get in your initial days? It was like, now I'll build my practice, I'll go to courts and I'll be a star or something. I left my job with nothing. So I took a rash decision that because we all have like main goal in litigation to start our own practice, and yeah, it was a risky decision. Still going by it. I'm not completely independent. I'm working under someone. Mr. Madhusudan, his name is. And yeah, but I left my job, got inspired by you, took a rash decision. But yeah, what you did was a lot bit courageous, sir.
So I mean, I look whenever.
Yes, sir.
And I've spoken to people who have been in the profession for 5-7 years.
Yes, sir.
Then they speak to me and say, look, should I now go independent?
Yes, sir.
And no matter how many years you spend, going independent is always a plunge. Always.
Yes, sir.
You're not quite sure how you will fare, whether you'll be able to attract enough work,
yes, sir.
how things will go.
Yes.
So there's always an uncertainty involved.
Yes, sir.
Frankly, you have to take the plunge. According to me, typically 2.5 to 3 years into the profession, you should think actively about going independent.
Okay, sir.
And within 5 years, you should do it.
Okay, sir.
Yes, I mean, this is a very broad timeline,
Yes, sir.
there will, it'll depend on your individual circumstances. But that's how a young person, according to me, should think about it. If what that person really aspires to do is to be independent, yes, you have to take a chance. Yes, there may be a little bit of financial uncertainty.
Yes, sir.
So, how secure you are financially and so on will, have a role to play in your decision. But, the sooner, in a sense, you do it.
Yes.
And I've seen a lot of people wait too long, and then you delay it and defer it because it's,
comforting.
Yes, it's, you may be in a comfortable environment, a good chamber, etc., etc. And it's sometimes just easier.
Yes, sir.
And the prospect of it is a bit frightening. But don't leave it too long, because there will always be a period of uncertainty. And you see the market. The market has to know that you're independent.
How do
Once you are in a chamber associated with somebody else,
Yes, sir.
then everybody will think of you
as a junior?
as a junior there.
Yes, sir.
So therefore you have to start to build that identity. People must know
Yes.
that, look, I'm out there, I'm now taking on independent work.
Okay, sir.
And you have to be available and be ready. It won't be a flood of work right away.
Yeah, that's true.
It'll take a little time.
Yes, sir.
But you just don't know how these things happen.
Yes,
and
sir.
they usually happen because, you do say a particular kind of case. You don't have too much work, so you really put your heart into it. You're super prepared. You have a successful outcome. That client tells 5 other people.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get those kinds of matters.
That's true.
And that's how it happens.
Yes, sir.
You don't know exactly when it will happen. Somebody else will notice you. Your peers will notice you.
Yes, sir.
And they'll say, okay, let me give this guy a smaller case and, take a chance. So
You can't predict what can
you
happen.
can't predict the exact trajectory.
Yes.
There's always a bit of uncertainty. So you have to have the stomach for it.
Yeah. So the next question is that basically law as a profession is a very demanding profession, long hours of work. Like you go to the court in morning at 10:30 and you come from court like around at 5:30, then you have briefs to prepare, conferences to go to. So how do you maintain work-life balance? Like you, as you told in the beginning, you have now 2 daughters, a family to look after. So how do you give time and how do you maintain that work-life balance, and how do you ensure that your juniors also have work-life balance, or work-life balance is a myth in the profession of law?
So I think an even balance, a balance in a true sense, is not possible. It's not possible. It's going to be imbalanced.
Okay.
No doubt about it.
Yes.
Because look, at the end of the day, if you're ambitious in the
Yes,
profession, there is a lot of mediocrity. There is. But, but at the very top, the folks who are successful, who stand out, all of them work incredibly hard.
That I've seen.
Right, incredibly hard. So that's a given. Beyond that is talent, beyond that is experience, beyond that is some luck. But a basic sort of sine qua non, right? A starting point is incredible hard work and sacrifice of time, commitment, passion, devotion to what you do, right? And for that kind of commitment, there will be a sacrifice of personal time, of family time, of developing other interests, pursuing other interests. So an imbalance is something that you just have to accept. But what you should work on is to reduce the imbalance. Once you realize that you're not going to have the perfect balance, you can still make it a point. The way that, look, everybody has their own way of doing things.
Yes, true.
A suggestion that I can make, and it's not one size fits all,
That's true.
is that, look, there are, say 10 other things that you want to be doing, okay? Put them in order of priority, right? Order them. What is more important out of these 10 things? And don't try to achieve all 10. Then you're being over ambitious. That won't happen, right? So accept that I have to sacrifice some part of this wish list.
Yes, sir.
Pick those 1 or 2 things, right, that are most important to you and make time for those. It's possible. For example, I almost invariably do not have any conferences on Friday evenings, right? I usually manage a nap, in the afternoon nap on Saturdays and Sundays.
Sorry to interrupt, but Kapil sir also takes naps.
Yes.
That's why the conferences start at 5.
That's right. So I'll have morning conferences and evening conferences. Afternoon will be nap time. So those are little pleasures. It also means that that's a way that catch up on sleep after a week of deprivation. Right. So that's some downtime for yourself. And family, look, you have to make it a point. You have to come up. So for example, exercise. Again,
yes, sir.
An important part of staying healthy.
Yes, sir.
And so I used to post-court earlier, try to take a short nap. I replaced it with exercise. And I realized that exercise can actually, though it's exertion, can have a very relaxing effect also, a rejuvenation. Because your endorphins are firing, your mind is taken, is off work. It can be a walk, it can be the gym, right? But you have to make that time. So you have to order your life in a certain way. But as I said, what people try to do is everything. They'll say, I'll go out also, I'll party as well, I'll drink also. Right now, you have to cut down on something.
Yeah, that's true, sir.
Right? So you have to say that, look, during the week, I will not go out to the extent I can help it.
Yes, sir.
And if it means that somebody is a little, upset by it, so be it.
Yeah.
You can't please everyone. You can't meet and make all commitments.
Yes, sir.
Pick the 1 or 2 things and live with that imbalance.
Okay, sir. So, you have had a career of 23 years till now. Do you remember your first case that you got 23 years ago?
Tough for me to recall the first case. I remember some early cases, and one of the early ones I had just enrolled in the last few months, October or so of 2002. In 2003, I remember getting a case which was a 482 quashing in Goa. Criminal case. And I had done a couple of small criminal cases, and my sense of the practice then in the Delhi High Court, which was the only exposure I had. I had Delhi High Court and Supreme Court, the petitions weren't filed in the first instance there. So all I knew about 482s was what was happening in Delhi High Court.
Yes, sir.
And in those days what used to happen was 482 notice, 482
Yeah,
notice.
yeah.
So there used to be 20 482s in one, criminal courtroom, and notice was issued for the asking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I thought notices are issued for the asking.
Yeah.
I also, I thought I assumed this must be the way it is in other courts.
Yeah.
So I went off to Goa for a client, and I felt very strange, frankly, going to the High Court there, because, my exposure to Goa was frankly partying. And I had just that New Year's Eve had been spent in, New Year's in Goa in 2022.
Okay.
And so, I thought of it as a party place. So going in, black coat and gown and all of this to court felt very odd.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, so I went off, and my matter reached just before lunch.
Okay.
Maybe half an hour. And so the judge at the outset said to me that, why 482? So I was silent because I didn't understand the question. He said, no, but why not revision? So I, stuttered a little bit and floundered a little bit. And I was racking my brains trying to think of some law. And so I just instinctively said, but there's no bar. Okay, so he said, yeah, that's okay. There may not be any bar,
yes,
but why should I entertain a 482 and why not a revision? I have a discretion.
Yeah.
So luckily, I was able to think on my feet. Therefore, I remember it fondly. And I said, yes, my lords are right. There is a discretion, but then whether to exercise that discretion or not, you can only decide if I tell you the facts first, because you must first know what has happened here.
Yeah.
So then the judge was quiet, so I started out on the facts.
Okay.
And I went really slowly, and then till lunch. And then I told my the instructing advocate, please take me to your chamber right away. I need to look up some law. So I quickly went. I had this vague memory of some case, which I then was able to. I called up some friends.
Yeah.
I was able to find Madhu Limai, which said no, but it's not a bar to 482.
Yeah.
I came back. I cited that. He said, okay, proceed, young man.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I got notice, and eventually the FIR was quashed. So anyway, that was one of the early learnings. That look, what you think is a practice in one high court, there may be a totally different approach in a different high court to the same law, the same procedure, but a completely different approach. So it was an interesting learning and something I remember from the early days.
So like you said, in this incident, you called some friends when you were stuck. So who do you call in these days? Because law, you learn every single day, and there are new questions every single day put to you, new queries come. So who do you call or who do you go to when these queries come to you, or you're stuck somewhere in a case or there's a problem? So who do you call? Who's your call?
Frankly,
sir,
honestly, now I don't call anyone.
Why, sir?
I discuss it with the people who educate me are my juniors. I call them when I am in doubt, and I say, this is my doubt, help me resolve it. They go, they look up things, they help me. Those are the people I actually turn to. If there's, occasionally if there's some issue that is really perplexing me and I haven't found an answer, I will speak to my father.
Yes, sir.
But it doesn't happen too often, to be honest. I went to him early days, just started out.
BCI drafting.
Yes, and I had a writ petition or something.
Yes.
And I went to him and asked him that, look, how do I draft it? And he said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? You've been in the profession 30 plus years. He said, I don't remember.
Yeah.
So I said, then if you don't know, then who will know? He said, look, you draft it, you bring it to me, then I'll be able to tell you what's wrong with it. So, he'd reached that stage in the profession. It's like a person who knows how to drive.
Yeah.
They don't remember the steps. It just comes so instinctively and naturally. They, their hand, it becomes memory, sort of muscle memory. Your hand just is able to manipulate the gear shift. But if you ask them to teach somebody how to drive, they will not know.
Yes,
that's another skill in itself. So, you turn, but, what I would say is it's not a bad idea to turn to people for help, but don't blindly accept what they tell you.
Okay.
You always have to be vigilant and careful, because people with the best of intentions misguide you. And you have to be careful, especially when you are doing things on your own, to take people's advice and then exercise your own judgment.
Okay, sir.
Right? And develop your own instinct about the right path.
So one more thing I wanted to ask, many people have this query. Miss Sibal sir was only an arguing counsel. He never drafted. Has he drafted? Because I had this personal query, so I wanted to ask.
I'm sure that he must have drafted in the early days. So did I. I also drafted in the early days. But what I used to do is that I used to very frankly, if the client was paying X money, which would be not very much, client was my client, I would nevertheless bring in a person to file.
Yes, sir.
I'd prepare it, I'd then discuss it with that person who may have better experience of filing. That person would be on record, but all the hard work in terms of putting together the petition would be done by me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Don't blindly follow.
Yes.
First you gain knowledge.
Yes.
So in my friends I have this thing, sir. So I say that I'm also doing 2 or 3 small independent cases. So they say that you first learn, and I say that I'm arguing and I let the other person draft. So as you have said now, they would also tease me on it. They say that first you learn everything, then do all this, because if you follow that thing blindly, that might backfire you also.
Yes. And look, people have this misconception that learning is somehow linear. First learn how to draft, then learn how to argue. That is not so.
Yes.
Learning how to argue teaches you how to draft. Why? Because you draft, if you are drafting and you don't have foresight of how this will play out in an argument.
Okay, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And whether a person on the opposite side can say, can point to a lack of foundation, or whether when you argue, what is the foundation that you'll require. So as you learn the court craft and the skill of arguing, you learn actually what the pleading should look like, what it should have, what it should not have. And the basics of drafting, yes, it's good to know the basics.
Yes,
frankly, the basics of all procedure of basic drafting, you can figure out and be on top of within a year and a half.
Okay.
Maximum 2 years.
Okay.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, that's true, sir.
But when it comes to the content, actually learning how to argue can improve your ability to understand what that content is that needs to go into the pleading. Right?
So my second last question is, so as you said that you watch female lawyers in court, you observe them how they're arguing. So now, as in the beginning you also said, now you have 2 daughters, sir. One is, I think, 3.
One is 6, the other is 13.
Oh, one is 6 and the other is 13. So in your family, I have observed this, I was researching. So Mr. Hiralal Sibal, then Mr. Akhil Sibal sir, then you and Amit sir. So there has never been a female lawyer from your family. So if your daughters join this profession, what would you advise them as a female lawyer, or should they go, any specific advice you would give them as female lawyers, or there'd be just advice as a lawyer, just keep this in mind, how other, you will give a male lawyer to, so or you will give a different, or a special advice to them, keep this in mind while you're arguing about it.
So, I'm hoping that by the time, if and when either of them shows an interest, the environment has changed for the better.
Yes, sir.
In terms of opportunities, It has certainly improved over time.
Yes, sir.
But there still remains,
That's true.
that kind of those hurdles persist, and in many ways it still is a man's world in the profession. So you have, number one, you have typically, what is the environment we see now?
Yes.
You have, of course, greater representation on the bench amongst even arguing counsel in terms of women, better than it was, but perhaps a far cry from where it should be.
Yes, sir.
Where you don't see a problem is in terms of representation of women generally in the profession. I won't call it lower rungs, that's not the right way to look at it, but in terms of people coming in, there are a lot of women in the profession. Look, typically women perform better academically, right, compared to men. That seems to be a trend. And so you do have a fair number. Yes, there are a lot who go to corporate, but you do have a fair number who come into the profession.
Yes, sir.
Most of my juniors at present and even historically have been, a lot of,
exactly.
Women have joined my chamber, and they've been outstanding. So I, see no difference in ability, performance, etc., because there isn't one.
Yes.
If anything, and these are very broad generalizations, because with human beings, generalizations only make sense up to a point.
Yes, that's true.
But often I find they tend to be a little better organized, than the male counterparts in many ways. So and I've seen incredible commitment, both in terms of time, notwithstanding that they may have other pressures or issues at home and so on. So I don't see a problem there. The problem is how many of them are rising to become arguing counsel. There they face hurdles. So one thing I do say, honestly, to women, and I've had some of these conversations, I say, look, it'll be harder for you. It is harder for you to get to an arguing counsel level, because first and foremost, clients don't trust a woman to argue quite as much and quite as easily. Things are changing, but that's a big hurdle. And typically women arguing counsel, tend to practice in particular specialized areas like family law and so on and so forth. But commercial matters, there are very few, right? There's not enough representation. So I think they have to have a little bit more perseverance, a little bit more grit. But the positive side of it is that a woman who, a female lawyer who does have that drive and is able to, stand shoulder to shoulder, becomes a role model for other women instantly.
Like Indra Jaising or Meenakshi.
They stand out right away. And therefore, that can also be an exciting thing to aspire to. Another male arguing counsel, drop in the ocean. Doesn't stand out.
Yes, sir.
Right? But if as a woman you put in that little bit extra and you're able to, you shouldn't have to, but if you're able to, meet some of those hurdles, overcome some of those hurdles, change perception a little bit and prove yourself, you'll find you stand out, you get encouragement, you do, both from the bench and the bar at times, and you're instantly, and who doesn't want that?
Yeah, that's
right. When you aspire to arguing counsel, you do aspire to a bit of glory.
Yes.
So I think that's something to help you stay positive about that journey.
And so good thing is what I am observing as just entering into the profession for a year or so. I at least see there are some examples now. I don't know what were the examples earlier, but I see Indra Jaising, Menka Guruswamy, and Arundhati Katju. For that matter, I've seen Mrs. Vinda Grover. Many female counsels have now come and started arguing in court. and they have become inspiration for my friends also. Like,
Yes.
they are big fans of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And very frankly, they are inspirations for men and women alike.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
true.
yes.
And so we come to the last question that is different from the questions related to law, and it seems to be one of the most popular questions. Will you join politics? Because that time in that interview you said never say never, so you have come along like more than a decade now.
Yes.
So is the
Look,
answer
I haven't so far. And
so far
thus far, and I will say that the fact that I haven't so far is a pointer in the direction
that you will.
that I may not. That I may not, because look, so far I haven't felt the pull. It's a difficult space. It has also changed and evolved in a way that I feel has become less inviting for a lateral entry as a professional. I think it's less welcoming now, the way that things have changed. I will say never say never. Maybe now is the right time to start thinking about it.
Yes.
But I'm still a bit, I have hesitation.
Because I would love it, because so you're like, for me, if you ask from my perspective, you're young, you're in like intellectual person, you have something to bring to the table. Like, what is missing these days, sometimes some politician says something, he becomes like, we have representatives who are not like, so who have knowledge of the issues that what they want to raise, and that I would request as a person, as an individual, I would request you that you join politics.
Oh, that's thank you, for having that kind of faith and that giving me that encouragement. Does help me think about it,
Yes,
pushes me in a certain direction. But very honestly, the profession as it is, it's punishing.
It's demanding.
It's punishing. You asked about work-life balance. As it is imbalanced.
Yes, sir.
And adding
This-
another sort of dimension to it will frankly require a lot more sacrifice.
Then how does Sir do it?
Well, he's incredible. I don't know how he does it. He has incredible capacity.
Because he's a musician, he is a writer, he is a poet,
He does his Dil Se.
That inspired me also. So he's like too many things. My fingers will be less.
I don't think I have that capacity. I will maybe try to build it if I can. I'll think long and hard, but I'm not there yet.
And he can do it because he's incredible.
Yes.
Okay.
I encourage all of you
Yes.
to subscribe to Frankly with Fazal and like, comment and share, and press the bell icon.
Thank you, sir.